Everybody, welcome back to the PROGCAST. Thank you so much for being here with us. We're in our 5th year now, inching up on 150 episodes, and we always have the most interesting musicians on the planet in all sorts of music. If you are not already following us or subscribing or checking us out on Patreon, I encourage you to do that because this is the kind of chat that you don't really get on many podcasts. And we are definitely going into a different area today, but one that I'm quite a big fan of. And our guest today is Per Nilsson. He's a Swedish guitarist. He's a record producer. I think probably best known for his work with the melodic death metal band Scar Symmetry, but he's also the guitarist for Swedish progressive rock band Kaipa, and he's the lead guitarist for power metal band Nocturnal Rites. He's also got a couple of solo project singles that we're going to talk about as well, but I'd like to welcome my new friend, Per Nilsson. How are you, Per? Welcome to the show.
I'm good. Yeah, thank you for the lovely introduction. And congratulations on the anniversary.
Thank you. We're still going strong, still having fun. And there's always interesting people to talk to like yourself. So I had the pleasure of hearing you 3 times with Meshuggah. I think
really?
You were there between 2017 and 2021.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I missed you. Has Scar Symmetry played in the States?
We have, but it's a rare thing, and last time was in 2016.
Okay. Well, hopefully that'll happen soon, or even Nocturnal Rites or any of those bands, because I think that America needs to hear the level of musicianship that's coming out of Sweden. And I think that obviously we became more aware of the metal scene in Sweden because of bands like Meshuggah. But I wanted to talk to you about your musical world, because you are a virtuoso guitar player, but you're also I think a music conceptualist. Is that fair?
Sure. No one's called me that before, but I'll take it.
If I ask you about Scar Symmetry, it seems to me like these are concept albums, particularly the last 2.
Yeah.
Okay. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because, I am a big fan of the large statement, and the concept album and the far-reaching concepts. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that process of what that band is doing when you're putting together a big piece like that. And also, maybe this is a sidebar, but the interest in science fiction or science that might inspire what that band is doing.
Sure. Well, let me start with saying that I haven't written any of the lyrics for any of our albums, so I don't come in from that side of things. But for sure, before all of the albums, really, we have discussions in the band what it is we want to do. And in the early days of Scar Symmetry, there was another guitar player who was also writing, so we were writing and co-writing, and we had a vocalist who added some of the vocal melodies, and was more of a collaborative thing. And then our drummer wrote the lyrics. So in a way, every album has have had some sort of concept because we have decided on a musical direction to go into, both in how we want the songs to be, if they're gonna be leaning more towards the death metal part of our sound, or if it's gonna be more melodic and song based, but also what kind of production we are going for, if we want to have it like radio friendly and slick, or something more harsh and in your face. So and I love to like fantasize about music before I even start writing. If I can imagine how it's gonna sound, it's like I need to build the world in my imagination first, and when I have that, then I get excited to sort of put things into motion and start piecing the thing together. And our drummer, he's no longer in the band actually, but he's like a sci-fi geek, and he is the one who's interested in science fiction and science and all of that. So it's like my interest in visualizing and conceptualizing the music has paired well with like him wanting to do that with the lyrics. And so yeah, that's how it's been working so far.
I think since you mentioned the term death metal, and I was thinking about this morning. Do you know the physicist Richard Feynman? The late great Richard Feynman worked on the Manhattan Project. He had he was I hope, like me, I try to be an eternal student. So I would say to you what he would say, which is, speak to me like I'm a little baby or an idiot. I don't know anything. What is death metal?
Yeah. And some people who are interested in exactly this thing could be super nitpicky about where the lines are drawn in between different genres. So, but for me, like broadly speaking, death metal is the kind of aggressive music that came out of mainly Florida and Stockholm in the early 90s. That's like the foundation of death metal for me. So on the US side, we had like Morbid Angel, Cannibal Corpse, Death, and in Sweden we had Entombed, Dismember, and obviously tons of other bands. And later on came like a second wave with more melodic death metal from Gothenburg. And but yeah, it's kind of a broad thing, I suppose, because it can be atonal with just super crazy riffs, maybe like a la Morbid Angel, or it could be more melodic, like At the Gates. So
now that's interesting, because I'm kind of looking at the musicology of it, and I'm wondering then what are the elements of Morbid Angel and the Florida bands, and then the Stockholm thing, where something was before it, and then now this is some sort of new hybrid. Is that fair? What are the elements?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really given too much thought on it.
It's fair.
Because we also have black metal, and we have thrash metal. And
now black metal is the one where guys murder each other for real.
Yeah, that's the one, and they burned churches, and obviously only a few actually did those things. The rest of them are, like all of us really are, mama's boys, and really we're not up to anything bad. We just, I mean, it's basically cosplay. Most of these things,
Understood.
People dressing up to be like an evil Satan worshipper.
So it's the most Black Sabbath for real. Whereas Black Sabbath, it was pretty much cosplay, but the music was heavy.
Yeah, but then like even in black metal, there are like the super dirty, crusty, low quality recording black metal. That's often sounds like absolute crap. I mean, like in the sense of the production, and maybe also in the musicianship. I think they had the best of intentions and a lot of heart in what they did, but then also we have black metal, which is then kind of broadly the same genre, but it's more symphonic, like Dimmu Borgir, which is they have symphonic elements that are very elaborate and often beautiful, and it's the same genre name, but it's completely different in most other aspects. So
yes, it's interesting to me that the symphonic element is something that is almost a through line through progressive music. You know, even if you look at early proggy kinds of things like Moody Blues, Days of Future Past, you know, you have an orchestra in there. And then you look at Deep Purple trying to add the orchestra to some of their things, and heavy music and the symphonic, or Keith Emerson and the Nice, which is, I think, a form of heavy music, doing, you know, the Carolina Suite and getting involved with Sibelius. So is that something that interests you at all? Do you see that as useful? Because there are things that you have done that I think border on that. Is that fair?
sure, absolutely, and it feels like the symphonic thing. It feels like almost like inevitable in a way, because if you are doing music that is like pushing the borders, like the thing we want to do is we want to push for more, and we want to go upwards and outwards and
Power
and add more and more things. And I guess at some point I wonder why not more progressive musicians do it the other way and try to scale things down more and more. That I don't think that is as common at all. So, and for myself, like speaking of Scar Symmetry and the style of music, people have sort of settled on melodic death metal, sometimes progressive melodic death metal, to have this container that we can put the band in, so everyone knows what it is and everyone feels safe around it. But when we started the band, we had the idea that we were going to have both melodic vocals and the harsh growling vocals. But other than that, we just felt like anything goes.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it's not like our music is all that eclectic, but compared to some of our peers, I suppose it is.
Well, you touch on an interesting area, because the title of this program is almost an in-joke in a way, because prog in what way? So we have this term progressive, right? If I tell you what I think it is, I'd love to hear what you think it is. But for me, it's somehow departing from established forms. It's tugging in some way towards either a new hybrid or some transmogrification of something and putting it in context of something maybe from the past. And so we progress to the next phase of X project.
Yeah. I agree, but and in that kind of with that thinking, it can be like almost anything in a way. But also progressive to many people is the sound, and there are also people who are, if they hear something that people call progressive, and they get upset because it does not sound like Yes and Genesis and Gentle Giant or whatever 70s bands that they look up to, and they feel like all progressive rock should sound like that. So which doesn't seem very progressive to me.
Right. Well, it's terminology, and let's not spend too much more time on this, but people misuse the term fusion. I mean, fusion is a concept. Fusion is not a style of music. it's a conceptual thing that you can graft onto anything, which is cuisine, painting, right? Film. So, if we're looking at it through that lens, then it's at that moment when people called something jazz fusion, it's jazz rock music. I think it's quite plain, actually, that it was jazz guys trying to play rock music, and pretty much that was the way that was. And then later on, the term got grafted on fusion, but fusion was always a concept. Stravinsky is fusion.
Yeah.
So this term progressive, if it means it could be anything, is that a bad thing?
I don't think so. But I have the luxury of not really having to care.
Sure.
Because I'm not the one trying to sort things.
I guess what I'm asking, and that's completely fair. I guess what I'm trying to do and try to get at is what the elements are, more so than what the terms mean. So for instance, you mentioned atonality. I think that's a big one for me, or certainly pitch organization. So that I think Meshuggah is a good example of in some of the riffing, some of the earlier stuff. There's that, and then there's also I hear parts of Scar Symmetry, which seem to be, harmonized vocals, major chords, so it also isn't context and fucking with form part of the progress too?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about Kaipa and I guess if you would talk about why that would be considered different than Scar Symmetry?
I think it's like the sound is obviously very, very different. And yeah, I'm not sure I understood the question.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, are you involved as a producer with that band?
No, I'm pretty much the guitar player, and okay. I get to sculpt and arrange my parts, but I don't write the songs. So
okay,
it's more like a session gig in a way.
What is that like for you because I noticed you have tons of solos on different people's records. Clearly that's something that takes a lot of your time. And also your multifold, kind of ability to get tones and different approaches on the instrument. Is that something where you're kind of brought in to do what you do, or you're brought in to do what is needed?
I think I'm always brought in to do what I do. For sure, in Kaipa, I get a lot of freedom to play however I want, and especially the solos. And as you mentioned, I'm featured on a lot of recordings as a guest soloist, and it's super rare that anyone would suggest that I re-recorded a part of the solo that I submit. It's happened maybe once or twice during the past 20 years. So people expect me to come up with whatever I want to come up with.
That's great.
And with Meshuggah, obviously, most of the songs it's just riffs, and it needs to be played as written and super tight with the band. But then for my leads, I actually asked Fredrik when I started playing with him. I asked him, "What do you think? So do you want me to play any of your leads or like?" And he encouraged me to just play whatever I wanted to. So that's what I do. And obviously, I mean, you've seen me 3 times with Meshuggah, so I'm sure you could tell that for the most part, I wasn't completely off from what was done on the albums or what the kind of way Fredrik plays.
You have to play the music.
Yeah.
And then, of course, those moments of spontaneity are, is it fair, only Fred's in the totality of what they're performing. But those moments are special moments. So you are kind of facing what were known solos, but also, recorded solos. But if we know Fred and we know what we love about him, we just never know what the fuck is going to happen in that moment. And I think that's so wonderful that he would say that to you.
Yeah, I mean, he said that he improvises all of the solos live, so like, why shouldn't I? Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of fun with that, and I always try to make the solo different from the night before, even though certain things sneak into the thing and appear often, but not in the exact same way.
Well, they're elements, right? They're fun, motivic things.
Yeah, some things that I just ended up really liking, like this kind of fastly gives the thing a lot of energy. But there were 2 solos where I tried to, when I started playing them, I just played anything. But then I noticed that in order to make them sound good, I needed to start on the same note that Fredrik started on the album, B flat on both songs. And I needed to start on that. I just needed to start off with the first note, same as him, and then I could take off.
Yeah.
Which was kind of interesting.
It is interesting, right? Because typically those solos, or always, those solos are over one note, right? They're over one tonal center, right? Yeah. So the options are infinite, but then again, there's some sort of home base has to be established.
Yeah. That's for most of the time I played the kind of same like modality that he was using, so I didn't turn minor to major just for the hell of it. Right. But that's not because I felt like I had to do it because of expectations or whatever. It because I'm also a fan of the music, and
true.
And I feel like a decision was made to play melodic minor, and if I at one point tried to do something different, it just didn't feel right. So but I mean, I when I'm hired for a job, I of course I have respect for my employers and for the audience and so on.
It's taste, it's having a concept of what is the music.
Yeah.
Also,
but it would have been terrible if I would have played according to my taste and everyone would have hated it.
Well, I guess I mean, all right, it's a tough nut to crack, but what percentage is it you are doing your thing, and what percentage must one be aware of what the material sound world is?
Mm.
And then where do you place your thing? Because that's a big thing for me, is what's the cymbal sound for this project? What's the best tuning for the toms on such a project? So, I think as we're both producers, and I think that in that way, we are talking about that thing all the time that you mentioned very early on, which is sound worlds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I like that you can differentiate sort of the lo-fi thing is very much a thing right now in a lot of different genres. So can you talk about sound worlds and world crafting and what your concepts are that go through your mind when you're working on any given project, or maybe something you're working on now?
Oh man, I don't know where to start.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I feel so fortunate to be living in an age where I'm able to do what I do when I can sit in front of my computer like I'm doing now and have access to basically anything I need, and I can do anything by myself pretty much. So I'm really enjoying that, and it's like my career got started kind of late when I was about 30, which, I mean, is not super late, but at the time I thought it was late because I was struggling with some injuries in my 20s. I couldn't play guitar for a few years. So when I got out of that, and like my first trembling steps as a touring guitar player, I felt like I was so old, almost like I'm never gonna have a career, which is kind of adorable. Looking back, I'm 51 now, so yeah, and I'm doing better than ever, I would say. So that's fun. But my career got started late, so, and all that was like all of these things existed back then. So when I started recording, even before I turned into a producer myself, I was always like recording parts of projects at home. So I've always enjoyed that very much.
Do you find that production is also very much what you don't do? Not just what you want to do, but what you don't want to do, what something shouldn't be. Do you ever find that?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, knowing that you don't want, say, for instance, want something to be hi-fi. So you're making that choice of what you don't want it to be, defining what you do want it to be.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I guess so. But that goes for anything you do creatively that you decide.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to decide what it is you want.
And what it isn't.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually have friends who are struggling with this very thing, that when they are gonna write something, they don't really know what they want to hear, and I think that's like, if you have an issue with that, it's like that's where you need to start. And when I teach my students, that's something I'm trying to make them think about when they are practicing and when they are learning a new scale, a new sound, and they are internalizing it and they are exploring the sounds. They need to look at everything they play and sort of measure and judge it. And what bits and pieces in this is it that I want to put into my toolbox, and what other things are you going to have like sit in the back seat and maybe not use as much. And I think that's incredibly important. And that's the very thing that defines who we are as an artist, and in everything we do. The things that we do and the things that we don't do.
I guess it seems obvious, but to me that somehow it seems like the powder keg, where you realize you can't do everything, and maybe you shouldn't. I like pieces that have maybe 3 subjects, but really work through them. Really working through those ideas. Whereas you can have a laundry list of topics in a particular piece of music and none of them connect. Maybe that's the concept. Maybe that's ADHD. I don't know. But it's interesting because there's that. But you have pieces, that linger. And Charles Ives said something which I thought was very interesting, which is, we know how butter is made, but how long must we watch the churning arm? And I love that because it's really asking you, how long am I going to be in that? How long am I going to make you watch me make that? Right? Development, repetition. Talk to me about your two most recent singles. You had one this year and one last year. What are those about?
Well, I have 3 solo singles.
Oh, I only knew of 2, so please go ahead.
Yeah, so far I have put out 3 solo singles. I mean, if I had tons more, I wouldn't need to mention that third one. But since this is like the entirety of my solo catalog,
okay.
I think it deserves to be in there.
All right.
So yeah, so I and it started as the guitar company that makes the guitars that I play, Strandberg, Swedish brand. They asked me to help them out with the promotion of a new guitar model. So I started writing a little piece of a song for like their promotional YouTube video. And I didn't really like the first riffs all that much, but I ended up in a really cool place with some quintuplet chugs with polychords stacked on top. The song is called Blast Radius, so if you have missed that one out, you should check it out. It's the proggiest of them, at least.
Huh.
But, yeah, so I gave them that track and we did a video for it, and then I decided to finish up that song and add more and more parts to it, and it's really layered and involved, and I'm very proud of it. So, and I at the time I was just about to start my Patreon. Are you on Patreon as well?
Yes, the PROGCAST on Patreon.
Yeah, so I that also became like the launching thing. I had like one solid piece of content that I could put up there and share, like the stems and the transcription and all of these things. But that song it's all me. Everything is played or programmed. I mean, I love playing with real musicians, especially drummers. But this one, I needed to produce it very quickly. So I didn't really have time to call someone up and, so it had to happen in a matter of days.
Oh.
Yeah, so that song is just like, it's just like a prog metal lasagna. It's just layers upon layers.
Okay.
And then after that, the second solo single, that's called Always, because I was looking for the next thing to record. I wanna keep pushing out some solo material, and it excites me to do it on a song by song basis.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I export the final like master, I can put it up where I want to put it up, and that's super exciting. So the second song, I remembered a little like voice memo I had of just me playing on a clean guitar or unplugged electric guitar. 8 years ago, my wife asked me, like, why have you never written anything to me? So I just turned on my phone and I sort of improvised this little thing. And it stayed in the back of my mind. And then I was like, maybe I should do something with that. And I had the A section, so I built like a B section and then a C section. C section. That always get me. But yeah, so I recorded that, and on that one I got my friend Darby Todd, drummer, fantastic drummer, to lay down the drums because it needed more of an organic, real musician vibe. Yeah, and I'm really happy with it. Also, a kind of simple song, but it's really incredibly layered. if you were to peel the surface on it.
Is it? Would you say it's orchestral? Does it become symphonic when it's that layered?
In a way, I think it does. Because also I recorded like the main part, which is like arpeggiated chords, where the top notes becomes a melody, and so I recorded that first, and then I started recording the lead guitar on top, and this is kind of the same thing I did with my latest solo track, The River That Remembers Nothing, is that I recorded the lead guitar, which goes pretty much throughout the song. So I recorded that early on, and it's part composition, part improvisation, which is the same thing, basically. Right? It's just different time scales. It's one is stop motion, and the other one is like in real time. So yeah, so I crafted like the melody of the song, and then everything else I sort of arranged and orchestrated around it. So when I have just like chords playing in the background with guitar or different keyboard sounds, they sort of move with the melody and sometimes embellish things and add like harmonizing things in different ways. So I can get exactly what I want from the chordal playing to, sort of emphasize the things that I want to pop out in the melody. Especially when I do melody where I play more like around the upper structure of the chord instead of down on the basic triad. It feels and the resulting sound when the entire thing sounds organic, but it's also super orchestrated, and I can hear the things in my playing that sounds improvised and are improvised, and I can hear all the instruments following along in an orchestrated way. I think that's quite something. There's a Bill Evans album called From Left to Right, I think, where he recorded it with I think it's a quartet, bass, drums, and guitar and piano, and then they overdubbed an orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
So you have like sometimes he plays a line in the piano and you hear like a 3-part like flute thing, like and it's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, and he did Conversations with Myself, which is he did 2 piano he overdubbed piano stuff. He was of course, amazing.
Yeah, so that's the thing that I absolutely love doing. So, and I suppose that's in a way symphonic.
Yes. I always want to ask guitarists of a certain ilk about someone that I don't think got his recognition in his lifetime, but maybe there's more of that now. But I wanted to ask you about Allan Holdsworth and how his impact was felt in your case, but also what your favorite Holdsworth performances might be. What are the key moments for you?
Sure. Yeah. So I always tell everyone that cares to listen that Holdsworth was my favorite guitar player and one of my absolute favorite musicians and composers as well. I just
composer, yes.
Yes. Very much so. And yeah, I just think his playing and his approach to music was wonderful and one of a kind and irreplaceable and inimitable. And so he's one of my big influences, maybe the top influence. Though, interestingly enough, I never really learned any of his music outside of the things that I could learn just from listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but I guess I've I wanted to approach things like in the same way that he did. And he was like a true improviser who always strived to do things differently the next time, and that's my own approach as well.
I worked with Steve Hunt, his keyboard player, for many years, and he spoke about Alan showing them tunes, and then they would write down what he was playing, and he didn't count them. So he had a feeling of how long each chord was. And then he would try to he'd do it again, and they'd go, okay, that's actually an extra beat. That's one. And then this one, Gary Husband would say, oh no, but there's a breath mark there. So, you know, and it's just fascinating to me, because this idea of how did they learn those tunes, and how did Alan think of them? Because, you know, they're not symmetrical. They're so largely just asymmetrical, but I think
they
feel exactly like themselves. And I think also the symphonic element of what he was doing is gigantic. I'm sure you know a piece from the Gordon Beck thing he did, With a Heart in My Song, which is Sundays. Do you know this piece?
That's one of the albums that I have listened to the least.
Everybody go out and listen to Sundays. It is symphonic Holdsworth. It sounds like it's for 5 organs. It's just this complete harmonic ecstasy. And I won't say more about it, but just it's one of my favorite Holdsworth pieces that shows that he was a big Charles Ives guy, that shows that he listened to, you know, the Impressionist composers.
Yeah. One of my favorite Alan moments is Distance versus Desire from the Sand album, with those like swelling synth pad chords that I think they would be absolutely gorgeous on strings. It feels like almost like they were written for strings.
Well, I think that was the case with even just the original washy guitar swells. He was trying to get there. He heard those, and and then we come to find out that he was Charles Ives, interested in Charles Ives, and the opening chords from Central Park and The Dark were these first stacking chords of the 20th century. And you hear them and you just immediately know that, yes, of course, Holdsworth knew Ives. Not to mention the iconoclastic, because he's the guy that got me interested in Tesla. When you hear when you hear a genius talk about who's a genius you should be checking out. Oh, I need to know more about Nikola Tesla. And of course, being an American from New Jersey, all we heard about was Edison. And so, Holdsworth helped right a wrong for one New Jersey resident, where everything was about Thomas Edison, who was not on the level of Tesla or Holdsworth. So what are you working on these days?
Well, my life has been very Patreon-centric since I started it, because I want to try to bring it up to a level where it gives me support. I mean, every musician thinks a lot about this. How are we gonna move forward in this day and age? And it's like reasonably successful now. So it feels like now I can start thinking a little bit more about other things. But I'm writing songs for Scar Symmetry. I'm writing new solo material. I have a few different ideas. I'm not touring all that much these days I've got aging parents who are still doing well, and they will be until they're not doing well anymore, as life has it. And I have a 6-year-old at home that I want to spend time with.
Yeah.
And I actually had my last show of this year in Zurich, Switzerland, last week. So I was gone for almost a week because I'm also the band's truck driver. So I drove all the gear down there, which I quite enjoy. It's quite a thing to be listening to your podcast, among other things, on the long drive. So, but I was away for 6 days, and when I come home, I'm putting my son to sleep in the evening, and he tells me that it felt like he didn't have a dad those days, and that kind of thing, just breaks your heart. So I feel super fortunate that at this point in my life and career, I don't have to tour all year to survive. Some people have set up their lives to be of that sort.
No, when I became a dad, I took myself off the road largely. Yeah. Actually, that's when I became serious about university and teaching and still having music as a job. But yeah, the travel is, you miss so much. I mean, you're gone for a week, especially at that age. They're different. Yeah. You're gone for a month. You come back to that. You miss that.
Yeah,
it's rough.
I did my last Meshuggah tour. It started on the day he turned 3 weeks, and we were gone for it was 6 weeks, and we were gone for 3 weeks.
Yeah,
but at that age, he weighed 2 pounds more when I got home, and was like a lot bigger, and I got it in my arms, and I was just crying for days. It was the worst feeling ever. So yeah.
Well, you made the right choice.
I think so, yeah.
And you won't regret it.
And I feel like these days you can have a career for a long while if you're lucky. But I feel like if I have a career now and I'm 51, surely I can have one when I'm 61. Maybe even when I'm 71. So it's something that I'm really looking forward to, when that day is going to come, and that I can be a bit more active on the touring front.
Yeah, but you have to go with the flow and take care of yourself. And you have another 30 years you can work with, or more. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
But definitely do the most you can do at any moment, right? But still, I mean, and that includes being a parent. I have a 24-year-old kid who is a professional drummer now and produces this podcast. And so a lot of what ended up being the time that he was just around me with music gave birth to this beautiful relationship and this thing where he's turning me on to new music. I'm turning him on to new music. We're turning each other on to new art all the time. So this is going to be an amazing ride for you, because just having him around the music with you at home, it just soaks in, And I never told him to listen to anything. He would ask me what it was, so it was just there.
Every evening when we go to sleep and I tuck him in, we always listen to Jacob Collier.
Yeah.
Which is, I've played some of the songs and he keep requesting them.
Yeah. And then when they know, when you realize that the ear is there. I mean, I think the ear in this case is nature, but I think it's also something that you can cultivate early with a kid. And just by, because I know what happened to me when I heard atonal music in the Planet of the Apes soundtrack in 68. that was no judgment. That was just, now there's a sound world that isn't. And I've always had this thing with struggling with tonal music.
Oh, really?
Because, yeah, like if it's too predictable harmonically, you know, and I was listening to a Steely Dan thing recently where it's a Steely Dan tune all the way through, and then suddenly there's an atonal 16th note riff in the middle, a la Zappa. And I thought, well, you know, yeah, and that's always part of the equation, I think, is with Holdsworth, I always felt that there were too many chord tones for civilians to really decipher what was going on. The density, this, you know, just the pure density of it made it sound like, to Steve Hunt's wife, like it was just random notes. So, you know, I'm always interested in how these things are perceived, you know, like why Holdsworth didn't land the way we kind of hoped is because he just kept, like in a Coltrane fashion, just keep going further and further into his own world. But he left so many major compositions and major recorded solos that I think that he's going to be seen as a Coltrane figure ultimately.
I think so too. Yeah.
And maybe more, because it's sort of that thing of, you know, he's standing on the shoulders of giants, and you have a giant standing on top of a giant, and you just, that's how far it's going to go. But I think about, you know, the meaty part of the curve in his work, and it's just every note, every articulation. And yeah. I'll say one last thing, and we can jump off of this, but not enough credit for the whammy bar. Not enough credit for his whammy bar stuff, because obviously he got sick of it and he sawed it down until it was like a little nub. But
that's true.
But think about that expressive thing, like almost like a Beck had his whammy bar thing, but it's like Holdsworth's whammy bar work at that time period.
Yeah, but it was like he couldn't stand hearing other people sound like him. If someone took one of his licks, then he would never play that again.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
And then there were certainly ones that no one else could play. So that was the other thing. He's like, oh yeah, well, see if you can keep up with this. Try to steal this one. You know, some of these moves, you know, and the size of his hand.
Yeah. And the ability to play over such complex harmonic structures in real time and play that kind of advanced melodic language and just move from chord to chord in a rapid fashion, it's mind-boggling.
It really is. And never a bum note. I mean, he might miss the transition to get back to a head, but no. He heard that stuff. Who are the other guitarists for you?
Well, beyond Holdsworth, it's just like a big mass of players, I suppose. Sure. I had like my first superhero was Yngwie Malmsteen.
Okay.
And also a brilliant player who also changed, you know, the world of guitar. And after the Yngwie years, I got into Steve Vai, and who I loved as much for his compositions and the arrangement, maybe especially like the way he arranges music and produces, because he was like the full package. Yeah. And his playing, of course. So he was the next hero of mine. But then after that came Holsworth, and improvisation is my biggest musical passion. It's what I do when I sit in my studio late at night and I pick up this guy, my guitar. I improvise, and sometimes I improvise over tracks, but most of the time I just start playing and try to always play something I haven't ever played. And by just putting my hand somewhere on the neck that I haven't traveled in a while, and if I sometimes it's like if my gut feeling tells me to go up, I go down, just to go that other way. And that is like what I got from Holsworth and tons of other players as well. But I'm relating to players who improvise.
I with you 100%. I wondered, are you aware of this guitarist Peter Frampton?
I haven't really listened to him, no.
Okay, he's saying the same things.
Yeah.
He's an improviser, and most beautiful solos, jazz lines over rock chords, or even some also more extended chords, and just someone that I think is underrated for being more than a rock guitar player. He was in Humble Pie, you know, he's got huge records here, but is doing his final tours now due to illness. But I think, you know, that idea of freshness and having an aesthetic or even a ethos that I am going to keep renewing as much as I can, and exploring and growing. And that to me it's wonderful to hear other people, you know, articulate that, because I think it's the way to be.
Yeah. I mean, as a human being in this world, I mean, you wanna keep being interested in things. You know, it's not really all that strange to me.
No, it's not, is it? Well, Paris, what a pleasure to speak with you. I want to thank our friend from Make Weird Music, Anthony Garone, who got us together, and he's a great guy and does many great things for creative music around the world. So thank you, Anthony. And Per, where can people locate your stuff and your Patreon, etc.?
Well, like my social media and Patreon alias is Scar Guitar. I needed to have some sort of nickname because Per Nilsson is a very common name in Sweden. So I couldn't call myself Per Nilsson anywhere. So I needed to find something. So Scar Guitar sounds cheesy, but it is what it is. And I'm on the Facebook and on the Instagram and on the YouTube. I'm even on TikTok, but I don't spend any time there. So just hit me up, send me a DM. Let's talk.
Awesome. So great to have you and to learn more about your musical world, Per Nilsson. Thank you. And everybody, thank you for listening. This has been another really engaging conversation on the PROGCAST, and we welcome you. If you're a new listener, and if you've been with us for 5 years, thank you for hanging in. There's always more. Thank you, Per. See you guys.
Cheers.